Chosen one, stop what you are doing right now and anchor your spirit to every word I am about to speak. That restless energy pulling at you, the one whispering that you should be doing more, pushing harder, forcing something to happen, silence it. Just for right now, silence it completely. The enemy is working overtime against you this week for one reason and one reason only. He knows that the moment you finally stop straining, everything you have been fighting for is going to land. It all shifts in the next 24 hours. The anxiety, the striving, the exhaustion of trying to make something move that God has already set in motion. But hear me carefully, because this is the part that changes everything. It is not shifting because you finally figured out the right strategy. It is shifting because of what you already did, because of the surrender you already chose. Think back to that moment this week when you put something down. Maybe it was a plan you had been gripping for months. Maybe it was a conversation you decided not to force. Maybe it was the moment you sat quietly instead of sending that message, making that call, or taking that next desperate step. You felt like you were giving up. You felt like stillness was the same thing as losing. You did not know it then. But that moment of release was the most powerful thing you have done all season. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. The Holy Spirit did. This is a divine appointment, written before the foundations of the earth, scheduled for this exact moment in your life. You are standing at the edge of something you cannot fully see yet. Stay with me until the very last second, because in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the spiritual verdict that explains why everything has gone quiet around you. I am going to show you the divine law that is working on your behalf right now, even in the silence, even in the stillness, even in what feels like nothing is happening. And, at the end, I am going to give you a declaration that seals this season of rest as a season of acceleration. Do not click away. Your future self is begging you to stay, because if you leave now, you will walk back into the striving before you receive what the stillness was preparing you for. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere around you has not just been quiet. It has felt suspended, heavy in a way that is hard to explain to someone who has not felt it. Maybe you woke up at 3 inches the morning this week, and instead of your mind flooding with plans, it was just still. And that stillness scared you, because you have built your identity around movement, around productivity, around always having the next step mapped out. Or maybe you found yourself sitting somewhere ordinary, at your kitchen table, on the edge of your bed, in a parking lot, and you felt this strange, almost grief-like feeling, as if something was ending, but you could not name what it was. You feel like you are waiting, like the whole world is moving and you are standing completely still in the middle of it. And no matter how hard you try to generate momentum, something keeps pulling you back into rest. And in that stillness, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie. Listen to your own thoughts right now. He is telling you that the reason things have gone quiet is because you are being passed over. He is replaying the moments you chose rest over action, and he is labeling each one as laziness, as delay, as self-sabotage. He is pointing at the dreams that have not arrived yet and telling you that the waiting is your fault. That if you had done more, pushed harder, tried differently, everything would already be here. The accuser is telling you that rest is retreat, that surrender is failure, that the stillness is a sign that God has moved on from your case. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Listen to that promise. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength, not those who grind without ceasing, not those who manufacture every result through their own effort, those who wait. The waiting is not the obstacle to the breakthrough. The waiting is the mechanism of the breakthrough. God is not asking you to do nothing because He has forgotten your dreams. He is asking you to be still because He is doing something in the atmosphere around those dreams that your striving would actually interrupt. The stillness is not punishment, it is preparation. The exhaustion you feel when you try to force things forward is not weakness. It is your spirit recognizing that you are working against the current of divine timing. And the peace you feel when you finally lay it down, that quiet, that almost unsettling calm, that is not emptiness. That is alignment. You think the resting has cost you time. You think the silence has delayed your destiny. Let me reframe your reality right now. The resting has been the work. The surrender has been the strategy. And the dreams that feel like they are far away are not retreating from you. They are moving toward you. You were never supposed to chase them. You were always supposed to become the person they could finally find. Hit the like button if this message arrived at the exact moment you needed it. Drop a comment below and tell me this. What is one thing you have been gripping that you feel God has been asking you to finally release? There is something God is trying to get you to understand, and it's not about doing more. It's about trusting deeper. There is a difference between the two that most people never fully reckon with, and that difference is the very thing standing between where you are and where you've been called to go. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. They reach into a part of you that words alone shouldn't be able to touch, and they awaken something that was always there but had gone quiet under the weight of everything you've been carrying. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, if something in your chest shifted, or your breath caught, or your eyes filled without you fully understanding why you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint, this sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny patterns that have been woven through your life since before you had language to name them. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God, letting the truth move through you even when your hands are busy and your eyes are closed. And for those called to speak His truth, for those who carry within them a fire that has never quite fit neatly into ordinary conversation, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment that they may not yet fully understand, but have always felt burning inside them. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Do not wait for a better moment. This is the moment. Now let's go deeper into what's really happening. Most people who feel stuck aren't stuck because they're lazy. They're stuck because they've been taught that stillness is weakness. Somewhere along the way, perhaps in childhood, perhaps through the voice of someone whose approval you desperately needed, perhaps through the grinding culture that surrounds us and tells us that worth is measured in output, you were conditioned to believe that if you're not grinding, you're not growing. If you're not pushing, you're falling behind. And so you pushed, you planned, you mapped out timelines and made vision boards and set alarms for 5 a.m. and told yourself that discipline was the bridge between the dream and the reality. You forced doors open that were never meant for you in that season and wondered why walking through them felt so hollow. You chased signs and then questioned whether the signs you found were real or manufactured by your own desperation. You prayed with urgency that sometimes looked more like anxiety dressed in scripture, calling it faith when what it really was, if you're honest with yourself, was fear wearing a holy costume. And still, despite everything, despite every ounce of effort you poured into it, the dream felt further away than when you started, not closer, further, as if the running itself was somehow creating more distance. Here's what no one told you. The resistance you've been feeling isn't evidence that God forgot you. It isn't evidence that you're not called, not chosen, not worthy of the vision He placed inside you. It's evidence that something in you hasn't fully surrendered to the season you're in. You've been fighting in a battle that already ended, and you don't know it yet. The victory was secured before the fight began. The outcome was written before the season opened. But you've been swinging at shadows, exhausting yourself in a war that heaven already won, because no one sat you down and told you that the hardest part of the chosen journey isn't the opposition from outside. It's the internal war between trusting God and trusting your own ability to make things happen. Because when God places a dream inside a chosen vessel, He doesn't need your help making it happen. He is not short-staffed. He is not waiting on your strategy meeting. He needs your cooperation in becoming who can carry it. There is a difference, a vast, critical, life-altering difference between helping God and becoming who God is forming you into. One is a transaction. The other is a transformation. Think about David. Before he ever wore a crown, before he ever stood in the courts of kings or heard the roar of a stadium crowd celebrating his name, he sat in a field no one cared about, tending sheep no one was watching, in a season that looked like it meant absolutely nothing to anyone paying attention. His brothers were warriors, tall, capable, impressive by every visible standard. His father didn't even call him to the table when Samuel arrived. Not as an oversight, not as an accident, as a judgment. Even the people who loved David had already decided he wasn't the one. By every human measure, David was invisible, overlooked, inconsequential, a footnote in a story that seemed to be about everyone else. But God said no. Stop. The one you overlooked is the one I chose. And while David was resting in obscurity, while he was singing songs to sheep that couldn't applaud him, while he was playing his harp under stars that didn't care about his dream, while he was developing his intimacy with God in the one place where no performance was required of him, God was resting something in him. A trust that couldn't be manufactured in a moment of pressure, a stillness that wasn't passive, it was rooted. A knowing that didn't need to prove itself because it wasn't performing for an audience. The throne didn't come because David chased it. The throne came because David became someone who didn't need to. But here's where it goes deeper. And I need you to stay with me here, because this is where most teachings stop and leave you with only half the picture. It's not just that you've been striving, it's that your striving has been revealing a hidden agreement you made with fear. An agreement that was signed somewhere in your past, maybe during a season when everything fell apart and no one came through for you. Maybe during a moment when you trusted and were betrayed. Maybe during a childhood where love felt conditional and security felt fragile, and you made a vow so deep inside yourself that you barely knew you made it. An agreement that says, if I stop moving, nothing will move. If I stop controlling, everything will fall apart. If I release my grip even slightly, I will lose everything I've worked for. That agreement is a lie. And it's not just limiting you, though it absolutely is. It's insulting the sovereignty of the God who formed you in your mother's womb, who numbered every hair on your head, who designed the architecture of your destiny before you drew your first breath, and who has been sustaining you through every season you were certain would destroy you. Every time you strive in that agreement, you are functionally declaring that God's power is insufficient without your assistance. You are putting yourself in the seat that belongs to Him and calling it faithfulness. And this leads to something most people miss entirely. Rest in the kingdom is not inactivity. It is not laziness. It is not giving up or checking out or deciding that your dreams no longer matter. Rest in the spiritual economy of heaven is the most aggressive posture you can take against the kingdom of darkness. When you rest in God's timing, you are declaring war on the spirit of anxiety. You are dismantling brick by brick, breath by breath, the altar you built to human effort, the altar where you have been sacrificing your peace, your health, your relationships, and your intimacy with God on the fire of productivity. You are standing in the face of every fear that has ever told you that you are not enough, and that your effort is the only thing standing between you and ruin, and you are saying no. I believe that what was promised will come, not because of what I do, but because of who He is. That's not passivity. That is the most courageous declaration a chosen one can make. That is power dressed in peace. That is faith in its truest, most undecorated form. Coming up, the hidden reason why your greatest breakthrough always arrives the moment you stop trying to force it. Stay with me, because this next part is the piece that breaks the cycle open and gives you back something you didn't even know you'd lost. When you look at the story of Ruth, you see a woman who had every reason to strive. Every reason. Widowed in a foreign land. Cultural outsider. No inheritance. No safety net. No family name that carried weight in her new country. Starting over from zero in a land that wasn't hers, with no visible path forward and no guarantee that anything would ever change. By the logic of the world she lived in, she should have been frantic, desperate, clinging to every connection, every opportunity, every angle that might give her a foothold. But what did she do? She gleaned. She showed up to the field she was given, not the field she dreamed about, not the field that seemed worthy of her history or her grief or her capacity. The ordinary field, the humble field, the field that asked nothing of her except her presence and her faithfulness. She stayed present in that field. She didn't plot. She didn't manipulate. She didn't engineer a chance encounter with Boaz or position herself strategically or rehearse what she would say when the right person finally noticed her. She simply showed up with faithfulness in the ordinary, and she did it consistently, without complaint, without performance, without the need for anyone to acknowledge how hard it was. And Boaz noticed her not because she performed, but because of who she was when she thought no one significant was watching. The anointing on Ruth wasn't in her strategy. It was in her character when no one was watching. It was in the quality of her presence, in the unglamorous ordinary. Your season of rest is your field. The ordinary place you've been dismissing as beneath you, or beside the point, or just a waiting room you need to get through as quickly as possible, that is your field. What you carry in the quiet, the integrity, the faithfulness, the depth of character you're developing when no audience is present, that is what attracts the divine appointment you've been praying for. Boaz was not attracted to Ruth's desperation. He was attracted to her peace. He was drawn to the woman who had every reason to be frantic and chose faithfulness instead. And what God is doing in your life right now, in this quiet season that feels like nothing is happening, is preparing you to be irresistible to the divine appointment that is already moving toward you. Now, once you understand that you're ready for this, the dreams God placed inside you were not given to torture you with possibility. They were not planted in your heart as a form of divine cruelty, as if heaven looked down and decided it would be amusing to give you a vision so large you would spend your life exhausted and heartbroken chasing it. They were given as prophetic seeds, and seeds do their most critical work underground, in the dark, where no one can see them, where there is no applause, where there is no visible progress, where by every external measurement, nothing is happening. But something is happening, something irreversible, something that cannot be rushed without being ruined. The season where your dream looks dead is often, not sometimes, often the season where it is doing its deepest growing. The root system that will eventually hold the weight of a massive tree has to push down before it can push up. The foundation that will carry a cathedral must go lower than the building is tall. You can't rush a root. You can't dig up a seed every morning to check if it's growing without killing the very thing you're trying to birth. And yet, and this is the part that breaks my heart, because I've seen it happen so many times in so many chosen lives, that is exactly what most called people do. They pray, they believe, they feel the stirring, and they say yes, and they step forward in faith. And then they dig up the seed with doubt before morning comes. They pray for breakthrough, and then Google their way out of trust. They surrender the dream to God on Sunday and take it back by Wednesday because the silence is too loud and the waiting is too long, and the gap between what was promised and what is visible has become unbearable. But here's the part no one wants to hear, and I'm going to say it plainly because you need to hear it said plainly. Some of your striving is not even about the dream. It has nothing to do with the vision or the calling or the breakthrough you keep pressing toward. It's about who you become when you're still. Because when you stop performing for God, when you stop substituting activity for intimacy, when you stop filling every moment of silence with noise and planning, and the scrolling, and the strategizing, and the anxious productivity that you've been calling faithfulness, when all of that stops, what's left is just you. And for many people, for many chosen ones who carry enormous gifts and genuine callings, that is terrifying. Because in the silence, the unhealed things speak, the grief you never gave yourself permission to fully feel, because there was always something more urgent to attend to. The wound you carried from the father who didn't see you, or who saw you and found you wanting, the mother whose love came with conditions you could never quite fully meet, the rejection that happened at an age when you were too young to metabolize it, and so instead of processing it, you made a vow so deep in your soul that you don't even remember making it. A vow that said, I will never need anyone again. I will earn everything I receive. I will make myself so capable, so useful, so indispensable, that no one will ever have the power to dismiss me again. And that vow that felt like self-protection, that felt like strength, that felt like the only way to survive, became your ceiling. Not the enemy, not your past, not the timing, not the closed doors, or the missed opportunities, or the people who betrayed you. That vow, that silent agreement, that wall you built around your heart to keep the pain out that has also been keeping the blessing out. And what's coming next will likely surprise you. It always does. Especially for people who thought they had already understood the deepest layer. The people who receive from God without striving are not more spiritual than you. They are not more gifted. They are not more called or more favored or more deserving of what heaven pours out on them. They're just more healed. They've done the interior work, the quiet, unglamorous, often painful work of sitting with their wounds instead of running from them, of bringing their deepest fears into the light of God's presence instead of managing them in the dark, of allowing the layers of self-protection to be peeled back one at a time in the hands of a Father who is gentle enough to be trusted with what's underneath. They've done the inner work that allowed them to receive without apologizing for it, without immediately questioning whether they deserved it, without looking over their shoulder waiting for it to be taken away. They didn't earn their blessing, they became someone who no longer blocks it, someone whose hands are open instead of clenched, someone whose heart has enough room to hold what God sends because they're not still filling that room with old pain and old vows and old agreements with fear. And you can become that person too. You can. But it starts with this. You have to grieve what the striving cost you. Not minimize it. Not spiritualize it into something clean and tidy. Grieve it. The relationships you sacrificed on the altar of ambition. The friendships that faded because you were always too busy. The intimacy with your spouse that eroded while you chased the next milestone. The childhood of your children that passed while you were building something that was supposed to be for them. The moments of stillness you refused because you were afraid that resting meant giving up, that slowing down meant falling behind, that peace was something you would earn on the other side of arrival. You have to let that go. Not because it wasn't real, not because it wasn't painful, but because carrying it has been heavier than you realize, and you have been bowed under a weight that was never meant to be yours to carry alone. Here's the real turning point, the axis on which everything shifts. God is not withholding from you because you haven't done enough. He is not sitting in heaven with a checklist, waiting for you to perform one more act of service or achieve one more level of holiness before he releases what he's been holding in reserve. He is waiting for the version of you that can receive what he has without immediately trying to manage it, control it, monetize it, protect yourself from losing it, or disqualify yourself from keeping it. He is waiting for the version of you that has enough interior space to hold something sacred without squeezing the life out of it. The blessing he's been preparing has always been on its way. The delay has never been about his willingness. It has been about your readiness, not your readiness to deserve it, but your readiness to hold it without breaking. The blessing he's been preparing requires a capacity in you that striving never builds. Striving builds walls. Striving builds armor. Striving builds the kind of competence and capability that looks impressive from the outside, but is hollow at the center because it was constructed from fear rather than faith. Surrender builds rooms. Surrender creates interior space. Surrender widens the capacity of your heart to receive what only open hands can hold. And God is trying to expand your interior before he expands your exterior, because he knows with a knowledge that is deeper and wider and more complete than any understanding you could ever reach on your own, that an unprepared vessel doesn't hold the weight of a kingdom assignment. It collapses under it. And he loves you too much to release you into a magnitude of purpose that would destroy you before you even had the chance to walk in it fully. And yet, there's something beneath even that. Something deeper still. The deepest root of all of this, the stratum that most chosen ones never reach, because they stop digging when they hit the layer of healing, thinking that's the bottom, is an unresolved question they've been carrying in silence for years. Maybe their whole life. The question is not, when will my dreams come? That's the surface question. That's the question you ask your friends and your mentors and your prayer partners. But the question that's actually driving everything, the question underneath every bout of anxiety, every episode of striving, every sleepless night, every desperate prayer that felt like it was bouncing off the ceiling, is this: am I enough without them? If the dream never came, if the platform never formed, if the book was never written, and the ministry never launched, and the recognition you've been waiting for never arrived, if none of it ever materialized in the way you've been hoping, would you still believe that you mattered? Would you still trust that you were chosen? Would you still feel worthy of love, of belonging, of space in the kingdom? Because here's what heaven needs to know, and I say, needs not because God is uncertain, but because your soul needs to settle this before it releases the fullness of what's been promised to you. Your identity cannot be carried by your destiny. Your worth cannot be housed in your calling. The calling was given to a person, not a performance. And if you have not learned to exist as that person fully, peacefully, without the approval of outcomes, then the calling will not complete you. It will only give you a larger stage on which to continue the same performance you've been doing in private. You have to be rooted in who you are before the dream, or the dream will become your next prison, gilded, perhaps, impressive to everyone watching, but a prison nonetheless. This is the unexpected revelation. This is the thing that takes people by surprise. The people who thought they had already done the deep work, the ones who have read the books and listened to the sermons and prayed the prayers and sat in the therapist's office and done the inner healing sessions. The thing that has been blocking you is not your enemies. It is not your circumstances, as real and as painful as they are. It is not even your doubt, though doubt has certainly played a role. It is your attachment to the dream itself. The desperation with which you've been holding it, the identity you've wrapped around it like a second skin, the way you've allowed the dream to become the answer to the question you've been afraid to ask. Am I enough? That attachment has been creating resistance in the very atmosphere where your breakthrough was trying to form. The dream you've been holding so tightly has become a closed fist, and heaven cannot deposit into a closed fist. God doesn't bless what you're gripping. He doesn't anoint what you're white-knuckling. He blesses what you've released into his hands, what you've offered back to him freely, what you've been willing to lay on the altar, not because you no longer care about it, but because you trust the one who gave it to you more than you trust your ability to protect it yourself. And until you can look at the dream he gave you, the dream you've built your identity around, the dream you've measured every year of your life against, and say with your whole heart, with tears streaming and hands shaking, even this, I surrender, you will continue to circle the door without ever walking through it. You will get close enough to feel the handle. You will hear the sound of what's on the other side. But you will not cross the threshold, because the threshold requires empty hands. So, tonight, before you sleep, before you reach for your phone to fill the silence with something that won't satisfy, before you begin planning again, or worrying again, or rehearsing the conversation you've been having with God about why it's taking so long, place your hand over your heart. Feel the rhythm of the life he's still sustaining inside you, and speak this with every part of you that is tired of trying. Speak it with the part of you that has been brave for so long you've forgotten what it feels like to be held. Speak it with the part of you that showed up here today not by accident, but because something in you recognized that you needed to hear exactly this. I release the need to force what God has already ordained. I release the agreement I made with striving, with fear, with the ancient lie that my effort is what holds my destiny together. I am not behind. I have not been forgotten. I am not a casualty of missed timing or missed opportunity. I am in a season of divine preparation, and I trust the process even when I cannot see it, even when the silence is long and the evidence is thin, and everything in me wants to take back control. I receive rest, not as defeat, but as obedience. I receive stillness, not as stagnation, but as an act of war against every spirit that has told me my worth is measured by my output. I release the grip I've had on my dream, and I place it back into the hands that formed it, the hands that know it better than I do, the hands that can carry what I cannot. I am enough without the title. I am enough without the breakthrough. I am enough without the recognition, the applause, the confirmation from anyone who has ever made me feel like I had to earn my place. I am chosen before any of that arrives. I was chosen before I ever understood what choosing meant. And I declare that what God prepared for me before the foundation of the world cannot be stopped, cannot be stolen, cannot be delayed past its divine moment, and will not be rushed into a form I am not yet ready to hold. It is coming. The appointed time is already set, and so I rest, I watch, and I trust. Not because the circumstances have changed, but because the God who holds my future has not. If this message reached you in a place you couldn't fully put into words, a place beneath language, beneath logic, beneath the part of you that evaluates everything before allowing yourself to feel it, share it with someone who needs permission to stop striving and start trusting. You may be the voice God uses today to give them the rest they've been afraid to take, the exhale they've been holding for years. You may not know who that person is until you share it, and then you will know. Drop the word rest in the comments and let heaven record your declaration. Let it be written not just in this space, but in the eternal record of every moment a chosen one chose to believe when believing was hard. Because you choosing to believe in this moment is not small. It is not insignificant. It is not lost in the noise of everything else happening in the world today. It is the beginning of everything. The moment you release the grip is the moment the door opens. And the door is already right in front of you.